Natasha and thank you so much for joining me today. Well, today we have a fun, easy one. We are going to be doing some torn techniques today with a paper pad. Now, any paper pad, I'll show you another version at the end as well that I made with another one. This is going to work fairly well with a paper pad where you can have several patterns or papers that are coordinating. Now, of course, the easiest way to do this is to get them from one pad, but you might just have a whole lot of scraps lying around and you might just want to go with shades of pink or shades of purple or shades of blue. So use what you've got. This is the one I'm going to use today. This is Simple Stories Flower Shop. This is a beautiful paper pad, but it's getting to be on the older side now, so it is a little bit tricky to find, to purchase, but it truly doesn't matter because that's not the point of today's video. Today's video is about learning the technique. This just happens to be the one that I'm using. Now, I often store bits and pieces that I have that are kind of, I hesitate to call them scraps, but just larger pieces, leftovers maybe, and I store them at the front, so I may as well use up some of those as well. And then I need to cut, for this one, I'm going to go with 1/2 inch strips. Now, yours do not have to be 1/2 inch. They could be any size you want. You can keep them all the same size. You can have different sizes. It doesn't matter at all. You might choose to have some that are probably 1/4 inch. You don't want to go too thin to work with. But you could have 1/2 inch, 1/4 inch, and maybe 3/4 inch, maybe some inch long pieces, inch wide. The world's your oyster, you can give it a go. So I'm just going to cut some strips to start with. Now I do need a decent few, but with these really long ones, this is a 6x8 paper pad, and of course that means it's going to be 8 inches in length, these pieces, so I can definitely get a good couple out of these. But some of my scraps or leftovers are a little smaller, and it doesn't really matter. That's one thing I like. It kind of is a using up leftovers situation, which is always good and always handy. I have 2 strips of cardstock here, white cardstock. They're not the same width, they're just going to be base pieces for me to base these strips off of. Remember that we're going to get to a torn technique soon, so first of all I'm going to layer these all up. Now the only thing about these strips is that they are going to be 5 inches tall. That is because I like to have a nice 1/4 inch gap all around on my card base. So my cards that I make are 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. And so with a 5 1/2 inch height, I want there to be a 1/2 inch at each end, 1/4 inch, sorry, which means a 1/2 inch altogether. So that's why they're 5 inches tall. And then really, I have put some double-sided tape down. You, of course, could use liquid glue if you wanted to, but the double-sided tape works well for me. I just make sure they've got a good amount there because, as I said, this is what's pretty much holding it together at this point. And then I'm going to layer these strips up until we get to the top. Now, of course, the nice thing about having a 5 inch height and then doing 1/2 inch strips is that that's going to fit nicely. But you might need to, depending on if you do random sizes or different sizes, then, you can figure that out. But the answer is we can always just cut it off when we get to the top. Then I want to tear a kind of a wobbly line, honestly, and I want it to carry on from each other. This is my preference rather than just doing random all over the place, but you could have fun with this technique and then make the other side kind of match what you've done. You'll see in a minute what I mean, but the good thing about this is that you can play around with how you want these to go, where you want the torn pieces, and of course your other decision to make is whether you want to have the white core of the paper showing. I like it being shown because I'm making the torn part of this a feature, so I tear towards me. If you don't like the white core of the paper showing when you tear, then tear away from your body, and that way you'll get just the kind of solid color on the edge of your paper scraps. So when I am working my way down here, sometimes I know if I'm going to have a short enough piece, I can tear it off, and it's going to be able to use both sides of these because obviously I've only used, I think, 4 pieces of paper, but actually I can use the other side of lots of these too. So then I want you to tear the other side. Now, this is where your options come in. I'm going to follow sort of the opposite pattern of what I did on one side. So I came in first and then went out with this way. And then on the second piece, I'm going to go out first and then inwards. It doesn't really matter, and I just sort of, if you're not sure which, where to tear, hold them up against each other. Mark it with a pencil. That's okay too. I just go with, roughly is good enough with a bit of eyeballing. But by all means, if you want to, mark them out with a pencil. And then I go ahead and cut off those extra little, once I have the torn piece, like exactly how I want it, I cut off the edges to make sure that they're really nice and smooth. Now, mine were pretty good. I did put them, they all had nice sharp edges I could work with, but I chose to just neaten them up anyhow. And also that does leave a couple of nice side pieces that you could use inside of your cards as well. Those are off to the right of my screen. You could just glue these straight down. The other example I'm going to show you in a second has it glued straight down onto your card base. I decided with this one to go with a little bit of foam. This is the 2mm foam, and I'm going to line this up, as I said, with 1/4 of an inch all around my card. So this is onto my card base, and because we did that 5 inches tall, I know that I'm going to leave 1/4 inch all the way around. So I've got the foam tape again on the other side, making sure it's got pretty good support so that it's nice and covered behind it, and then line this one up as well. Now, as I said, mine kind of match with this way, but yours don't have to match exactly either. You could have a lot of fun with how this goes. As for the sentiments, I'm going to use some of these Katy. So again, these are older too, but they're so good and we have them. So we're using what we have when I just don't feel like stamping out a sentiment, really. These have 4 sheets in here, 1 set of complete gold, 1 set of complete silver, and then 1 set of gold colours and 1 set of silver in colours. So there's a lot to choose from. There is a good lot of sentiments in here, and these are super handy. As I said, when I just don't feel like doing a full sentiment or searching out for the perfect one, these are really handy. Then this middle part is where you can go for gold. I've got this Ooh La La butterflies from Simon Says Stamp. I am going to cut these out in some of the coordinating colours, the same colours that I used for these strips. And you could do stamping up here. You could do die cuts that you have coloured. You could make them wider than what your little strip is that we've created down the centre. You could do die cuts, anything you want. Honestly, I just chose to do these because they were sort of nice and dainty, and it goes with the get well soon sort of theme. A few little butterflies, I like to layer them up. This one has some really handy ones. It also cuts out some dots. I think the die is meant to, so that you kind of use the negative, but honestly, I love the butterflies that it cuts. That's probably how I've used this more, but I do need to try some other techniques with it as well. But super handy. I glue a few of the little butterflies together and then pop a little bit of glue just down the center of their body so that their wings are free. If you're worried about their wings staying up, then by all means you could pop a little bit of foam tape behind it and just add a few on. Now, I will forewarn you here that I was really enjoying decorating this one. I kept going and going and going. So the next card that you'll see has a little less, and I would say this one has a little more, and that's okay because I really, really enjoyed the process. I did add some of the little dots that die cuts out as well, which is, again, super handy, sort of matching confetti as you go. And so I'm just going to add a few of those on. And then, of course, for the center of the butterfly bodies, lots of options here, but I'm going back to my Nuvo drops. I haven't had these out for quite some time, and we need to keep using the things that we have. So I'm going to pop a little gold body, and then I couldn't help myself. As I said, I just kept going, and I did some more little dots and filled these in a little bit more. Lots here, but I really like this card. It was fun to put together. I really enjoyed this process, very stress-free, and really enjoyed it. Here is the card that we made today with that beautiful gold sentiment. I love this, bright and cherry for a get well soon. And then the other one that I made was using a paper rose paper pad that I had. And this one here, it's got all very similar colours all throughout the papers. And so this vintage rose set felt like a really easy option as well. Again, lots of good patterns, but all the same colours that flow. And I went a little less on the dots and extras. But same butterfly die set used to create it. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope you give this technique a go. I look forward to seeing you in the next one.